Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alecia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked.
Hello and welcome, twisted humans, to episode 79. Today I have a pretty heart-wrenching cult story for you, but first we are going to talk about some fun facts. But quick warning before I ask Sierra what interesting fact she has for me. It appears that my upstairs neighbors are just arbitrarily banging on the floor, so if anyone hears anything, I apologize in advance. I cannot control the people upstairs.
They're bowling.
Apparently. Well, they do have 3 kids, and we've talked about them a few times. Like, I think on a few occasions they've died mid-episode.
Right.
It just seems to be more frequent the last 2 hours, so quick warning. But Sierra, tell me something fun before we get into this week's episode.
Something fun. I feel like... Was it my last one? I think it was the one before the last one.
Oh my god, the dragonfly one?
The dragonfly one, yeah. I feel like I kind of...
fun fact.
Like, superwoman power hated on men with that fun fact, and I'm about to do it again.
Well, it's fitting for this week's episode, so get it.
Male honeybees
Oh no.
are called drones. They don't have a stinger. They do
Really?
not participate in nectar and pollen gathering. The only purpose of the drone is to impregnate the queen bee. That's it. Nothing else. Bees are like, fuck these dudes, we got this.
Well, who run the
Male
world's girls?
bees.
Literally. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
They don't give a shit about the dudes.
Sorry, dudes. We love our male listeners, but if you were a honeybee in another life, I apologize. Actually, well, do they die after they have sex? Is it like a...
No, they just wait to have sex again.
They're waiting their turn with the queen bee.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's worse existences, but I think that that's hilarious that that's their only purpose in this community.
It's their only purpose. Like, that's all they do. That's all they're good for. The rest of the time, they're just playing fucking video games. Okay.
A perfect fun fact for today's episode. Well done. Oh my god. I love that. And my fun fact is kind of odd, but also kind of in line with today's episode, but kind of not at all. So celebrities are known for giving their children, strange names, as we know.
Definitely.
There's been Apple, Inspector, Gravity,
Blue Ivy,
Blanket.
whatever the fuck Elon Musk's kid's name is.
I have
no
idea.
one knows.
No
one
idea.
knows.
So North, like just weird names.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be famous necessarily to opt for an unexpected baby name. According to BBC, a couple once tried to name their child's, are you ready? Twisted Humans and Sierra. BRFXXCCXMNPCCCLMNCKSSQ LBB11116.
You
which
lost me. Why?
Apparently was supposed to be pronounced Albin.
I'm sorry. No.
However, when they applied for this baby name, which apparently you have to apply in Sweden, it was not surprising, but it was rejected.
I'm so glad you have to apply in
just
Sweden.
Fucking cruel. Why would you... Can you imagine, like, how many times in school do you have to write your name?
Yeah, this is why abortion should be legal. That person clearly did not want to have a child.
That's so
okay.
Fucked. I saw that and I was like...
Don't have a child and then torture it.
I think
don't
I
fucking do that.
short-circuited a little bit. Oh my god.
Ugh.
So yeah, that's horrible. And if you're gonna insist on naming your child something weird, at least make it something that's like 5 letters long so the poor kid can write it out. Jesus Christ.
Some people should not be parents.
I agree.
Don't force people to be parents. Anyway.
Yeah. on the nose again. But we're definitely going to need some wine for this week's episode.
Yeah.
And Sierra already told me that she budgeted 2 glasses of wine for...
I already had one.
Oh. Well, I guess savor it.
Yeah.
So today we are on a red wine. And we are drinking Oak Leaf Vineyards Merlot. It's been a while since we've done a Merlot. And my bottle, unlike Sierra's, was not $3. It was $10.99. But still.
What?
Still pretty cheap for Canada wine. I'll
Oh
take
my
it.
God. Mine was literally $2.94. I was like,
I
have
laughed
to.
so
I have
hard.
to.
Yeah, it was on budget. Especially on budget. So at Oak Leaf Vineyards, they carefully select grapes hailing from growing regions renowned for Mediterranean climates of warm days and cool nights. This medium-bodied soft Merlot has a captivating nose of blackberries and ripe plum, complemented by a satisfying finish. And they are rich in flavor, color, and usually have a smooth taste. That is what this particular wine is known for. So we'll see about that.
Don't judge the size of this glass. My
I'm not
last
judging.
glass was smaller.
I'm not judging.
So
Have you
this
seen the glasses I pour
evens it out.
myself?
I know. I'm just saying, like, I literally talked about how I budgeted a certain amount of wine.
She drew on her wine glasses, guys.
I did. I am going through a very vigorous
Health
eating
phase.
routine.
Yeah. We have
So,
talked
I
about
have
it
to figure it out.
not much of the time, but we've talked about it a few times on Patreon. So, I mean, if you want to know what's going on with us personally more, too, go check that out. But we're here for business, guys. Oh, do we not like it? I had a sip of... Oh. I was like, you already had a glass.
While you were reading, you'll see when you go back and edit the video, I was struggling.
Did you bite the cork out of your...
I did. My tooth hurts now.
Well, I'm going to have a good laugh at that later while I'm editing. I might use it for a Sierra GIF. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since I've made a GIF of us.
Yeah, for a red, I really, really like it.
It's smooth.
My first sip was like, ew, this is dry. But then I took another one and I was like, no, this is good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sometimes
it is dry, but
that's
it's
why
good.
There's that rule that you always have to take 2 sips of wine before you have a feel of if you really like it or not.
Yeah, definitely. I like it.
Sierra, what would you rate this one?
Oh, I think it's still drier than I'd like, but I think I'm gonna go with an 8. It's pretty good.
I'm going with an 8 as well.
Yeah.
I like it.
For $3 I can handle this.
No kidding, hey? So before we get into this week's cult episode, we are going to take a quick break and hear a promo from Freaky as Fuck podcast. And we will be right back. And we are back! I gotta add a little pizzazz in this episode because I'm bringing us down, guys. I'm gonna do my best to keep it afloat. Sierra already knows because we talked about this.
Yeah.
And it was something that we both wanted to do, so I already encouraged her to kind of just jump in wherever she sees fit. I guarantee she, like all of you, is going to have a lot of opinions on this week's episode, so I'm just gonna dive right in. The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, or more commonly known as the FLDS Church, is a religious sect of the fundamentalist Mormon denominations, or to put it bluntly, a cult.
Yep. I always forget what the F stands for. Fundamentalist. Good to know.
I mean, they had to shorten it because really that does not roll off the tongue.
Oh, right, I know. I just always called the LDS, but it's the FLDS. That's crazy.
Yes. Many of our twisted humans have likely heard of this particular cult. It became more popular in modern day culture and chatter because of Netflix's 4-part docuseries released this year called Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. This docuseries really outlines the events that took place inside this community better than any amount of articles on the internet could have combined. And after watching this, it not only opened my eyes, but it actually just really broke my heart. Me and Sierra both cried when we watched it. And this is not a recap and discussion. That's not what I'm here to do. I just want to give credit where credit is due, and also, point out where a lot of my information came from, because even when I had started this research back when Sierra and I had added cults to the rotation, so a long ass time ago, a lot of the information, as I watched that docuseries and I looked back on the resources that I had seen online, a lot of the information was wrong. So we're lucky to kind of hear the stories from some of the members themselves, right, or ex-members. Yeah. So that clears up a lot of information, and their stories deserve to be told right. So I'm glad that I was able to watch that as well for that reason. So their stories are super courageous in the way that they tell them, and you can also see a great deal of pain and suffering in them to this day. But I'm going to try and do it justice, and we'll talk about many of those members throughout this episode. So buckle up. I'm going to take a swig because I need it.
Yeah.
So the fundamentalist Mormon movement first emerged in the early 20th century, when their founding members were excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the LDS Church, which is probably why people hear both of those things. This was largely because of what I just told you, but it's also because they refused to stop practicing polygamy, and it was so ingrained in their practice, being dubbed the Second Manifesto, that they became their own church in the 1950s within Short Creek.
Can I just interject that, don't you think maybe your church is fucking wrong when they go changing the rules?
Yeah.
Like,
that's
no offense,
alarm bell number
people,
one.
But
100%.
Yeah, like, oh, you're allowed to have as many wives as you want. Actually, we're not doing it anymore because that kind of sucks. Okay. This whole thing kind of sucks then. Like, I'm not at all agreeing with the FLDS. They also fucking suck. But, like, if you can just change the rules, don't you think somewhere down the line a man changed the rules? Maybe it's not God and Jesus who told you to do these things.
100% agreed. And even if the government in our world today is largely trying to control what we do beyond maybe what is reasonable, polygamy is illegal in many countries and states and places today. So it's like, there's a reason for it. Like, a lot of times it's unsafe. A lot of times it's, not consensual. A lot of times it's, a outlet for abuse. So it's like, again, red flags. Like, if they're telling you not to do something and you're gonna just go over and do your own thing and have your own rules, and that's basically rule number one, like, I wish I had a little red flag for this episode, for all of the red flags that we see throughout this. So
definitely. But I do want to point out that polyamorous relationships are a little different. Those are usually consensual. That's not
100%.
Something that we're dissing on.
No, God, no. My really good friend Jason is part of a group couple situation. He has two partners.
Right. Yeah. Partners, fine. Marriage, I'm not married. I'll just say that.
Yeah. And also, like, we're not talking one or two people. We're talking upwards of 20. So.
Yeah.
So that's their second manifesto. And this area is now what we know to be the Twin Cities of Hilldale, Utah, and Colorado City, Arizona. So when I'm referring to Short Creek, that's that times town name.
I feel like Nevada, Utah, Colorado have the most fucking polygamous relationships ever.
Like, but it's largely because
Mormons
of
and LDS and FLDS
members. Yeah.
Oh, man.
A lot of the members still reside in that area today. And unfortunately, as I learned in my research, there's also a group that has some members in a town called Bountiful in British Columbia. So my province. They've leached
Yay.
into Canada. Great. I mean, they're still people and they're entitled to their beliefs, but they're not entitled to a lot of the actions that I'm going to outline today. So I just want to be clear on I'm hating
Jesse
a lot.
and I literally just drove by an LDS church the other day.
Did
and
you?
I was like, ew, look, it's one of those. No offense. I know not everybody is like this. But
and not everybody is to the extreme. That's why we just
Right.
kind of want to lay the groundwork of the hate that's going to come out in this episode, because
yes,
there's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of child sex trafficking. There's a lot of wrong. So this anger and this ranting comes from a place of being educated and wanting the well-being for the majority, and that is not what the FLDS does. It is the well-being
whether or not
of one.
And whether or not it's all of them, we're talking specifically about the FLDS group that Alecia researched in this area.
One particular cult. And yes.
Right.
Other newer church settlements are also located southwest of Pringle, South Dakota, Manchos, Colorado, Minnow, North Dakota, and Grand Maria, Minnesota. So even though their practices are outright wrong in a lot of ways, they still have a significant following. The exact number of members of the FDL Church are not known due to the taboo nature of their practices, kind of like we've just discussed, but it was estimated to have 6,000 to 10,000 members at its peak, and in more recent years, membership has suffered due to being excommunicated by the current prophet, who we will get to, and members just escaping or leaving because of their own well-being or choice. So, like I said, one well-known fact about the FLDS is their practice of polygamy. They believed the more wives a man had, the closer he was to achieving his highest power and the closer he was to God. One particular man, the prophet, basically had God speak through him, and he would dictate the actions and the marriages of the fellow church members. He was also considered a constant reincarnation of himself, appearing as a younger version or being reborn again and again, or so the belief goes. The first leader of the FLDS Church was John Y. Barlow, who led the community of Short Creek until his death in late December 1949. So this was right around the time that the LDS Church had excommunicated many of these members, and they had started their own church. He was succeeded by Joseph White Musser, who was the church's leader during the government crackdown on polygamy, known as the Short Creek Raid in 1953, because, like I said earlier, polygamy is illegal in a lot of places. So law enforcement was cracking down on it. And this is also part of what made them congregate to their own communities and live outside of regular human day-to-day life, because they wanted to keep some of that out of the eyes of law enforcement and everyday people. Joseph led the community until Roland Jeffs was appointed to be his successor, which is where the story today kind of kicks up a notch. With many wives comes many children, and when a man's daughter was ready to be married herself, she would be quote-unquote turned in to the prophet. Many times he had influence over this himself, if he had his eye on one particular girl, and he would dictate who she quote-unquote belonged to. Now, I say girl literally. Many of the daughters were married as young as 14 years old, and having children by the time that they were 16.
Ew.
All of this is extremely problematic for obvious reasons, and much of the time these girls were married to men much older than them in the community. If the prophet wanted you to be his own wife, there was a secret handshake in the community where he would squeeze the girl's hand 3 times. That was the case for one such woman in our story, Rebecca Musser. Maybe that name sounds familiar. The second prophet. She's of that lineage. When she was 17 years old, she was married to Roland Jeffs. He was 80 years old at the time that she married him.
So fucking gross. So fucking gross.
Right? And it's not even like an ageist thing. Like, that's just outright gross. She's not even a legal adult. Roland had pictures of all of his wives on the wall in the order in which he had married them, of which there were 23. Rebecca remembers that everything about this relationship felt wrong. She didn't want to consummate the marriage. She didn't want to touch Roland at all. And she would do whatever she could to get him to go to sleep, like massaging his feet, whenever she was invited to bed with him.
The scariest part is that these girls, because of the religion, didn't even know what sex was until they were already married to an 80-year-old fucking man.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, by the way, I'm going to put my old-ass wrinkly penis inside of you now. And she's like, what is this?
Yeah.
What is happening to me? What the fuck?
And it's there was brainwashing, there's assaults, there's rape, the story is all around coercion. Sad, guys.
Yeah, it's bad.
Trigger warnings all around. If the intro to this wasn't a trigger warning enough in itself. Additionally, every night before bed, the wives would line up to kiss Roland goodnight. I'm sure Rebecca wasn't the only one that felt this way about Roland at the time, but women were expected to quote-unquote keep sweet no matter what, which meant you were in control of your emotions. You didn't display anger or frustration, especially in front of the husbands, uncles, and the father of the community.
Which meant the opposite of fuck politeness. So, fuck that.
Yeah, we stand behind fuck politeness, for the record. Keep sweet. Fuck you.
Yeah. I was never sweet to begin with, so...
I mean, I'm pretty
sweet. I don't know how to keep.
But if somebody taught to me the way that these girls were talked to, and they were controlled the way that they were controlled, I would have thrown out some serious dick punches.
Yeah, unfortunately, they literally did not know any better. They were raised this way.
And it only gets worse for different generations. For future generations. Women had no right or respect, and they were considered second-class citizens in the FLDS community. But that was only the beginning. Another woman in the community at the time was Alecia Roebuck. She grew up being taught that you had to be a good wife and then a good mom. She was married to Roland when he was 86 years old and she was 20. So she's at least a legal adult, but it's still gross. And it's still not her choice.
She was coerced, for sure.
She always thought that when she was married, there would be some sort of magic. But there was nothing there. She was honored to be the right wife of the prophet, of course, as that is what she was taught, but something about it didn't feel right. Between all of Roland's wives, he had 63 children, 32 boys and 30 girls. Some of the girls were married off to men before they even got to know who their other family members were.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother issue with the Our Father recap that we did.
Oh, yeah, on Patreon.
People can't just be all fucking related like that. That's not healthy for the population.
It's not. Yeah, go check it out, definitely, guys. That's one recap that was really tough, and there's health issues that come with that. Like, one of Roland's wives, known as Mother Marilyn, was considered special. She had one son, Warren, who she believed was extra special. She would pose him to be the next prophet. She was always wanting to be close to Roland, and she wanted her kids to be as well. So I guess climbing this fucked up social ladder.
You gotta do what you gotta do when you're stuck in that situation, I suppose.
Warren Jeffs was plain awkward and was simply, quote, the son of a man who had power, end quote.
He reminded me so much of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh my god, it's funny that you say that, like skinny, awkward, and just gives you the
Yes.
creeps by looking at him. Absolutely.
Yes. Like, every characteristic about him was like, is he a serial killer? Because he could be.
He was also very close with his sisters in inappropriate ways, and whenever somebody in his family reported it, i.e., younger brothers or sisters, they were told to drop it.
He's gross.
All of the children in the FLDS went to the Alpha Academy until they were married off, where they learned the basics of life as well as all of the teachings of the FLDS community. Of the priesthood teachings at the academy, Warren became the principal and went on a serious power trip. All of the books that had any influence in the outside world were cut or removed altogether until the only books that were left were on FLDS teachings.
And that's when you know that shit is wrong. That's why I don't like
Absolutely.
Mormonism. Don't cut people off from experiencing and learning new things.
Yeah. That's how we learn
If
who
you
we
think your
are.
way is the best, then it'll be the best even when they experience other ways. Let them experience other ways.
Absolutely. Rebecca, who I mentioned earlier, remembers that she really loved reading Nancy Drew, but that was, of course, part of the selection that was cut. Every generation after hers and Alicia's, who we also mentioned, really knew nothing but the FLDS teachings. Alecia was quoted as saying that she didn't even know who the current president of the United States was. That is how sheltered and cut off from the world they were.
Aww.
On August 6th, 1998, the world of the FLDS community was rocked. Roland had a stroke. He became very weak and was not his all-powerful prophet self. Warren was quick to step up to the plate and start taking over his responsibilities. He was quick to take over a lot of things, in fact, and very much put emphasis on the end of the world teachings and instilling fear in the people that if they didn't subscribe to the FLDS way, that they were basically going to be wiped off the planet. In 2002, Warren claimed that the Salt Lake City Olympics were bringing the end of the world, and thousands of members followed him to Short Creek. This was really just a way for him to get the most members in one area and exercise the most control. That and the Olympics brought with it people from all over the world and large groups of outside people that would be difficult to control if his members interacted with these people. So what better way than to say that it's going to bring the end of the world? Members remember waiting and waiting for the end of the world to come as the Olympics passed and nothing happened. Shocking. Mm-hmm. When nothing happened, the members looked to Warren for answers, of which he did not give. On September 8th, 2002, more confusion and tragedy was brought to the FLDS members when Roland Jeffs died. Many people were devastated, and they kind of just waited for him to reawaken, as their teachings had taught them. Becca, one of his younger wives, remembers feeling really scared, but also really relieved. Because Warren had already gained so much control over the years, when he started speaking as if he was Roland reborn, no one was really surprised as he started shifting his act to being Roland reincarnate. When he was announced as being the reborn prophet, he had most of the support, but a lot of this, like I said, had been built on fear. He made all of Roland's wives wear white dresses, and they were married off to different men in the community. Warren remarried many of them himself, which is really fucked up when you think of it, because they're kind of like his mom wives.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, not that you know, because I watched the same documentary and I don't fucking know. Are they not, like, stepmoms to him? Like, why does he think it's a good idea to marry them? What the fuck?
I don't understand. I don't think I'll ever understand.
I mean, I don't think I'll understand polygamy in general.
I'm too jealous of a person.
I just don't understand how it works.
I don't.
Polyamory I can get. I can get loving more than one person. I mean,
But this is different.
But
this
I can
is
get
like
it.
a power trip.
Marrying more than one person is literally for a reason, for a gain. And it's like even on like Sister Wives, like, do those other women not also parent the children that the other one's birth? Like, you would think, but I really don't know.
That's kind of how this community was painted, though, because they referred to many of the women, you know, as mothers.
Right,
like
right.
Mother Marilyn, Mother Alecia, Mother, like, but so I imagine Warren would have done the same thing. That's where it's like, it's cloudy. It's like, yeah, he was one of the oldest children to Roland, but
he was probably older than some of those
women,
some of his mothers.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And but he would have likely been parented by some of them, so marrying them, like, it's gross. I'm sorry. There's nowhere else to call it. One of his mottos became "work hard for the privilege of working harder," and things in the FLDS community really became dull from here on out, from activities that were permitted to clothing to music. It was required for women to wear their hair in a braid from here on out, and there were a few approved hairstyles, French, waterfall, etc., but no hair could ever be out of place.
He had like a weird mommy issue thing with that, because he specifically liked like the bangs fluffed a certain way and everything. Like, I don't know what the issue was, but he was clearly making everybody look like one fucking person.
Yeah.
Like, everybody had to look like this one person that he knew.
That's all that the women were to him, were like a pawn. So it's like, might as well make it consistent. And women would spend hours doing their hair in the morning because it had to be perfect. They were no longer allowed to wear pants, and they had to wear specific prairie-style dresses. Yuck. So the minute the Warren took over, this community became even cultier, for lack of a better word, because that's not a word, but that's what's happening. For most, the fear of disobeying the prophet kept them compliant. As much power as men had in the FLDS community, though, that didn't mean that all of them did. Warren started kicking out many boys and young men between the ages of 13 and 22. They didn't have wives or really a place as he saw it. Plus, there was a surplus of men, with all of the higher-ups marrying many girls and women. They became known as the Lost Boys. Many becoming homeless or having nowhere else to go. At one point, there were 400 reported teenage boys that were removed from the church because they had committed such offenses like dating a girl that they had a crush on in secret or listening to quote-unquote unpermitted music. One particular member that had become a lost boy was Joe Roebuck. He and Ruby Jessup fell for each other at the ages of 14 and 16 years old. They were attracted to each other but knew the rules of the church and would talk on the phone each night or pass notes and meet in secret locations. Warren Jeffs married Ruby when she was 14 years old to her half-brother, Harley Barlow, who was 10 years older than her at the time. Ruby claimed that Harley raped her on several occasions during their marriage. When the abuse became unbearable, she called on her two brothers to get her help and get out of there, both of whom had already left the church. After Ruby escaped and went to live with her brother and his family, Joe was used by Warren Jeffs to get her back, promising that they could finally be together, and then he was excommunicated after she came back. All aspects of life, from restaurants, stores, even law enforcement, was ruled by Warren Jeffs. Young men weren't the only members at risk. If you were too smart or too able or posed a threat to Warren, you were quickly put in your place. One such family was the Wall family. Lloyd Wall was a respected engineer and devoted all of his business and skill into the FLDS. But despite his loyalties, Warren saw him as a threat and took away his second wife, Sharon, for himself. Because remember, the more wives you had, the more power you had. So if he's leaving him with just one wife, that's basically like calling him nothing.
So fucked up. Ugh.
Yeah.
This guy literally took people's wives away, and with them went their children.
Absolutely.
People literally lost their children because fucking Warren Jeffs.
In more ways than just, yeah. If you were excommunicated, you were basically no longer a member. You basically never existed there. Mm-hmm. Your children were like told to forget that was ever your dad. This is your new dad now. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not the way that love and biology and affection works, especially with this family, because they were pretty close-knit. Lloyd, in fact, had his first wife, Myrna, which is weird because I've never known another Myrna other than my grandma, and that's my middle name. But they were close from the start, and between his two wives, he had 18 children. So one of those children was Alecia Wall, and she becomes a big part of our story. But another one of those children was already Rebecca, who we've talked about. Alecia was married to her cousin, Alan, when she was 14 years old. She knew it was wrong. She knew she wasn't ready. And she pleaded to Warren to not make her do it. But he told her that it was her quote-unquote duty. Alan went on to rape Alecia every day, and she was unhappy. But she did befriend Ruby, who was married the same day to her half-brother, who we already talked about. And these two girls sought comfort in each other. But after Alicia's older sister, Rebecca, at the start of our story, left the church, things became more unbearable. And that is when Alecia had met Lamont. Up until this point, Alecia had tried to have children, as that's what she was told to do, but she continued to have miscarriages. And as we know, miscarriages can sometimes be caused by stress. And she was obviously very stressed. But to her, because this was somehow meaning that she couldn't perform her duties, she thought that, it was kind of a message that, her body wasn't allowing this to happen. Not to mention these two are fucking related. So when she met Lamont, she said that she felt safe. She felt happy. She felt comforted. She fell in love. And that she would meet up in secret because she was still married to Alan. But one day, Alecia was called into the prophet's office. And Alan was sitting right there. She was basically ostracized for her actions. She was called an adulterer, which, yes, technically she was cheating, but I don't think she did anything
on
wrong.
Her cousin.
Yeah. Exactly. And, Warren had told Alan that he had done well. And she already had mixed feelings about this community and already felt that her pleas weren't being heard and that her needs didn't fucking matter. And she said that she left that meeting knowing that her life in that community was over. And she said it nearly killed her to leave because after Rebecca left, she had two younger sisters that were still in the FLDS community that were bound to have the same fate that she did. When she left the church, her and Lamont ran away together and, kind of started their lives together. But that's where Alicia's actions in the story become even more important because now she was out. She was a resource for private investigators who were already starting to dive into the FLDS controversy. One such private investigator was Sam Brower. He first started looking into the FLDS community because of reports of underage pregnancies and underage marriages. However, because they lived in their own community, this was really hard to prove. And because of the fear-based following, especially with these women who had no rights, having people come forward as witnesses was nearly impossible. So everybody just kind of pretended that everything was fine when he would approach them.
Didn't they actually find out that the underage pregnancy thing was happening kind of on accident?
Yes.
Someone, like, totally called in a prank phone call and was like, I'm an underage pregnant person at the FLDS location and someone should come and save me. And police went there and realized, holy shit, there's a bunch of underage pregnant people here. And then later they, like, dug deeper and realized that the call came from a completely different place and was totally a prank. But good thing that fucking prank came in. So,
and
like,
that prank happened
even
because all of the people outside of this community, they could see that things were wrong in there.
Yeah,
and,
well,
and
also-
rumors spread. And
Also, even you pranksters, listen to your gut. If you gotta prank somebody one time, you gotta prank somebody one time, okay? If your gut
if you're
tells
gonna make
you
it
to.
a prank, I guess make it one that's gonna save people.
Exactly. It might be for a good cause.
But it's kind of messy after that.
It
but
is, yeah.
We're not there just yet.
Oh, okay.
No, you're good. I'm getting there. So, because of this heat that was now on Warren Jeffs and the FLDS community, he made himself really scarce. He went on the run. And he engaged along the way in all of life's pleasures that he was teaching all of his followers to be evil.
I was so confused.
Pissed.
I was like, are you kidding me right now?
He is the biggest hypocrite in the world.
And he wasn't alone.
No, he had his favorite wives with him, as well as 2 of his brothers. So he went to Disneyland. He went to Las Vegas. He went to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. He was bouncing around hotels. It was clear that he was watching porn from the bills that were leaving these hotels. But he was really good at hiding because he had a vast amount of money. Because families, anyone that was of working age within the community, had to meet the call. And that was $1,000 a week. And in order for some of these in order for some of these families to be able to reach this, they were maxing out credit cards. They were, remortgaging their homes, of which he already fucking owned, and making it nearly impossible for them to be able to live. Everything that they did have, they were scraping by. There was no surplus for them. It was all for Warren. And he convinced them that it was going towards a higher cause. It was going towards building Zion. But before Zion, and while he's on the run, surveillance in the town kicked up a crazy notch. There was cameras everywhere. And it was clear that these cameras were spying on certain people and certain families. And then all of a sudden, after months of Warren being on the run, he appears in church on January 10th, 2004. When he got there, he made it clear what his power was and what his mission was, and that some of these people had been sinning and had gone against the prophet's will and had gone against their overall mission. And he called out 21 names of various men in the community. But these men really hadn't done anything wrong. They, like Lloyd Wall, were seen as a threat. And again, families, like Sierra described, are ripped apart. Alecia Roebuck, who I talked about at the beginning of the story, had married Warren's brother Leroy. She loved Leroy. After being married to Roland, she was remarried to Leroy. And she described that love as what love should feel like. Together they had 2 daughters, Alecia and Rachel. And they were happy. They were a happy family for a while. He called her lovey-dovey, and it was very clear that he loved her and that he was the favorite wife. Or that she was the favorite wife. So, in Warren's eyes, that's not, trying to be a higher power. That's not trying to marry as many women as possible. That's just wanting to have a family with this one woman, and that's a problem. So, Leroy was on that list. And they were told not to look at their families. They were told not to say goodbye. They were told to go straight home, pack up their belongings, and leave. and the wives would be remarried, and the children were told that those were no longer your parents. That's not your dad anymore. You have a new dad now. This is your new dad. And that's exactly what happened for Alecia. She was told to burn all evidence and destroy everything that had even marked that Leroy had been in the community. And that went for every other family that this affected. People were in tears, but at the same time they were afraid. And he was like, does anyone object to this? And no one did. Everyone put their hand up as if they were in agreement, and all of these men had to leave. And then Warren pulls his disappearing act again, now that he's set a precedent on who's in charge here, like a fucking asshole. And slowly, the earnings that were being sent to Warren, which was $250,000 to $300,000 a week, that were being sent to him in secret while he was on the run, started being put toward building Yearning Ranch Zion, or YRZ. It was the heaven on earth that he had promised, and people were hand-selected to go there. But most of them went with no goodbyes, no anything, and they were described as poofers. They'd be in town one day, and they'd be gone the next. Zion.
They were blooped.
They were blooped. They were blooped, but in the worst way. This is worse than being blooped.
Worse than dimensional or extraterrestrial blooping.
I'd rather be deleted than this bullshit.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I can't.
Possibly.
I can't. This man is horrible. Zion was considered a grooming ground for the most pure to believe all of Warren's teachings from the start. Children were taken away in the middle of the night. Some never even got to say goodbye to their families. They were just gone. Mothers would wake up in the middle of the night and their children were gone. They would talk to their husband, where's so-and-so, and they were told not to worry about it and that they had been chosen and that they were in a better place now. Many of these children as young as 2 years old. Yeah, I know. This is about where I started
sobbing.
Luckily,
better place does not mean dead.
No, yeah, it means heaven on earth.
Literally a better place. Well, quote-unquote better place. But it's a place. It's literally a place.
Yeah. Alecia and Rachel were two of the girls that were chosen to go to Zion. They were taken away from Alecia. She didn't even see it coming, and she said it destroyed her. It was. This is about where I started sobbing uncontrollably. But meanwhile, Warren Jeffs is still on the run while all of this is happening behind the scenes back in the FLDS community. But on August 26th, 2006, he was caught.
Well, that's 2 days from right now.
I know! It's freaky. The day that we're recording, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was caught. He was charged to aiding in a rape because Alecia Wall had finally cooperated with law enforcement and testified against him, telling law enforcement her story. They had finally found somebody that was willing to do it, and it was because she escaped. And a year later, Warren Jeffs went on trial. This is also more sobbing because Alecia told her entire story. She said that she felt that he no longer had power over her. She was forced to face him in the court that day after being protected as this secret witness, only known as Jane Doe number 4. But she looked him dead in the eye, and he was the first one to break gaze. Following the testimony, Warren Jeffs was found guilty of 10 years in Utah for aiding in rape, which meant, he was proven to have forced this marriage on Alecia when she was 14 years old. And, of course, they had to consummate the marriage, so there are literal photos of her looking miserable with Alan in a honeymoon hideaway tent situation.
Yeah, it's shitty because the men, like Alan, were taught once you get married, you have to have sex. The women were never even taught what a fucking penis was.
Yeah, it just was like, surprise!
They were terrified.
Yeah. Especially because
they're
children.
They had to do that.
They're 14.
Yeah.
And he was sentenced to 10 years in Utah. And I wrote in my notes that she is a fucking force to be reckoned with. She gave a speech outside of the courtroom that day, saying that it was hard for her, but she's hoping that this brings strength to the current FLDS members. And she felt that this was the only way that she would be able to protect her two younger sisters, like I said, that were still in there. And she also had a great deal of support from Rebecca, who had experienced her own traumas when she was married to Roland, but not nearly what her younger sister had endured. Like Sierra had talked about, that crisis call, that hoax that ended up being a good thing because this allowed investigators and Child Protective Services to enter the ranch for a wellness check. And there was more evidence of underage pregnancy than they were prepared for. And in Texas, that is a crime, which is where the Zion Ranch was being built in El Dorado, Texas. So the police raided the scene and 416 children were taken out.
That part was honestly really sad too.
It was.
Because some of the moms are so brainwashed, they thought that, the people trying to help were bad guys.
Yeah. And the children had never seen anything else. Many of them were taken to Zion when they were really young kids. So it's like they think that these people are bad guys, these people in black. Alecia, one of Alicia's children, was later interviewed as saying that she thought they were devils because they were wearing black, and all of the girls in Zion had to wear pastel. So it's like, what is this colorless being that's showing up with a bus to take us away from who we believe is our mom? Like, it's heartbreaking. Meanwhile, Warren is still in prison in Utah, carefully selecting women to ham it up on live TV about this raid and their children being taken away, and that nothing illegal or sinister or inappropriate is happening in here, and we just want our children back, and we're so woe is me and wronged. And he's also having people come and visit him in the prison, and they're vigorously taking notes on camera while he's talking to them. His teachings are still getting out of the prison, and his orders are still being taken out of the prison. And from a media standpoint, as the story blows up, these women crying on television, doesn't look good that the police had just taken away all these kids.
Yeah.
So they were unfortunately tied at that point, and they had to return their children back to their parents. But they had to be taken back to their birth parents, some of whom had had their kids taken, like I said, as young as 2 years old in the first place, without their consent. But they were told by the FLDS leaders that they needed to lie. They needed to let them know, or Texas law enforcement know, rather, that they were fine with this and that their kids were safe and that their kids were happy and that this was all hunky-dory, which it really wasn't. Alecia walked in to get her two girls, and they didn't even recognize them as their mom.
It's so sad.
I could not stop crying because to her entire world had been shattered. But to them, they had been brainwashed past the point of they don't even know who their mom is. Mm-hmm. And again, they're calling all of these women mother, but this is their actual mother. And they were scared. This was the case for many kids. But they were returned to the FLDS Church. And if this story wasn't dark enough, guys, it's going to get darker.
Yeah.
So, police were at a standstill. They knew that children were in danger. And they had Alecia testify, which got him behind bars. But it wasn't enough to keep him there forever. And it was only a matter of time before all of this puppeteering would allow him to get out. So police had to find something to hold him there. So they worked with both Rebecca and Alecia to gain knowledge of the inner workings of the church. And Rebecca remembered that when she was married to Roland, that there was a record of it. There was photos, there was paperwork that was done, and it had to have gone somewhere. Obviously, they didn't know where, but they had a pretty good idea. The giant temple that had been built within Zion was bright white and locked up. They believed that their best bet was that records would be found in there. Law enforcement, along with Alecia and Rebecca, were flown into Zion, and they were not met with welcome arms. There were men standing outside of the church, clearly not wanting them to enter, but they had to do something, and all of this evidence thus far was enough for them to be able to get a search warrant. They searched the temple, which was 4 floors, along with a basement.
It was so eerie and disgusting.
It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Just walking through the fucking building was terrifying.
Everything was stark white.
Everything. Oh, it was gross. It was gross and scary.
And they found a vault at the bottom of a winding staircase.
It was like somebody made hell pretend to be heaven. It's fucking terrifying. Oh my god.
On the 4th floor, there was also a white room with a white bed.
Oh.
And nothing else. They spent hours trying to get through this vault until they finally did. And records on records on records on records, photos, everything you can imagine. It was like a treasure trove for police looking into this case. But it was also a box of horrors that they were not ready for. Within these records showed the marriage of Rebecca to Roland. It showed Alecia to Alan, as well as 67 other girls who Warren Jeffs had taken a part in marrying to other men within the community. In addition, there were also tape recordings from quote-unquote sacred sessions, and Warren was on tape molesting and raping his underage wives. He talked them through how to have sex, basically.
And not just with him, like, basically fucking orgies.
Mm-hmm.
All of
Everyone
them.
had to leave their robes. There was one quote that, this is the only quote I included in my notes, was everyone has a part to play. And it was just outright wrong. So Warren Jeffs went on trial again in 2011 with their new findings, and these tapes were played for the jury. On the jury were 10 women and 2 men, news reporters and investigators and prosecutors that were in the court, said that he had to be protected. Like, the people in the jury were wanting to climb over the barricades and murder them with their own hands, because many of these women are mothers.
Yeah.
And I'm not a mother, but I was bawling at this point and listening to these tapes, and I don't even know how Sierra must have felt. Like, that's just, it's disgusting. He is an absolute narcissistic, self-serving monster. He has lied. He has
he's a rapist. He's a
manipulated.
Pedophile.
He has
offender.
Yeah, he's encouraged this amongst other men in his community and endangered countless children. He's ripped apart hundreds of families without even batting an eye. And he was sentenced to life in prison.
Thank God.
And unfortunately, he is eligible for parole in 2038.
It's disgusting.
So I'm really hoping that in that time, other women like Alecia, who have left the FLDS community, come forward and are willing to testify and show up at his plea hearing and make it so that he never gets out.
Yeah, the sad thing is a lot of FLDS members are still FLDS members because that's all they know.
Mm-hmm. One beautiful part about the documentary that I wanted to include in my notes was when Alecia finally left. She had packed up all of her belongings with her brother. She had finally been reunited with her children. And when she was driving on the highway, the bay doors of the trailer that had all of her belongings from the FLDS world started flying out of the back of the truck. It was run over by semis, other vehicles, and she was kind of just like, fuck it. This is a sign from my God
this is the universe
that I need to start over.
Fuck this shit.
Yeah,
all this shit, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
oh God.
And that
what
is
a fucking story.
The horrendous story of the FLDS Church.
And specifically Warren Jeffs, because that guy can fucking suck a dick and die.
He can suck a dick and die, but he's still leading this from prison because people are still following him. Like, he shouldn't be allowed to have visitors. Like, this is just...
His literal words literally hurt people. So, like, please stop it. Ugh.
I want to punch him in the face so bad.
Yeah.
So, sorry guys, I know some cults are really tough. I have yet to find a happy cult like my beautiful co-host here, who has brought us up on her last two, but yeah. That's my cult story, and I'm sorry, but these stories needed to be told. Awareness of what's happening in these communities need to be shouted from the rooftops and stopped. So, we love you guys. Thanks for listening as always. I think after going through that brutal research, we deserve a 5-star rating and review. And we really appreciate it. And you will be rewarded with an entry to win Patreon for free for a month. And me and Sierra filming ourselves doing something embarrassing in a month. So
for sure.
But before we roll on out of here, Sierra, please tell me that on this day is better than this current moment.
Well, it's definitely better than the FLDS Church.
Well, that's really a low bar. It's a really low bar.
It is. Today is September 6th. And on this day in 1916, the first true supermarket was opened in Memphis, Tennessee. It was called Piggly Wiggly.
Oh my God, I love it.
Do you have a Piggly Wiggly?
No, but I want to go to a Piggly Wiggly.
There's Piggly Wigglies here.
Can we go to a Piggly Wiggly?
Yeah. Well, Piggly Wiggly here is actually really... Well, there's a bunch of them. But the one that's closest to me, I've gone to a couple times. They have really good meats.
Okay.
Every time I feel like I'm going to get kidnapped. It's scary.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, maybe we will just take a picture outside of it and then run.
Right. Anyway, before the opening of this Piggly Wiggly, every grocery store had clerks that would get your food for you. Even the dry food came in barrels. Well, even the dry food came in barrels, and the clerk would literally scoop your crackers out of a barrel, however much you wanted.
That's wild.
Piggly Wiggly was the first self-service. Scoop your own and save money because you didn't have to hire as many clerks. You didn't have to pay somebody to do it for you.
Oh, you're not paying the middleman anymore. But meanwhile, our lives are so busy that we're paying that middleman to do our grocery shopping for us.
Right. But at the time, this led to individual packaging and the grocery shopping experience that we know today, or yesterday, I suppose. Now, again, like Alicia's saying, basically we're like, actually, can we just get somebody to... Oh, no, you're fine. Actually, can someone just bring the groceries out to my car, please? Thanks. But, so also I heard this creepy thing about Piggly Wiggly. I couldn't verify it, but I had to share it with you anyway.
No.
So, the logo of Piggly Wiggly is a pig dressed as a meat butcher. He's cutting his own meats.
Oh, that's
and
fucked up.
I believe the reason is that the pig is getting his groceries on his own, self-service.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a pig. And we eat pig. So he'd be butchering other animals, including pigs.
That's dark.
Yeah, the rumor is that once upon a time, there was a commercial or an advertisement that showed the Piggly Wiggly pig cutting up a pig carcass. And that there was even one ad where he was cutting himself.
Oh my God!
I'm
so sorry to our listeners' ears and to Sierra's. Jesus.
Yeah, that's the rumor. I haven't seen it. The worst I've seen is him holding a plate of raw meat with a butcher's knife. So I don't know if the one of him actively cutting is real or just like a weird creepypasta thing, but it's
I
interesting.
really hope it's a
guess.
creepypasta, because that's morbid as fuck.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. I'm really
See you next
glad
week?
that, yeah, I'm really glad that, you know, commercials and things aren't as dark as they once were. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week for a brand new episode. Go check out our Patreon for lots of bonus episodes. It's a new month and the perfect time to join. And it would be an amazing birthday present to Sierra and I if you went and left those 5-star reviews or checked us out over there. And in the meantime, keep it twisted, but never this twisted. Thank you for listening to Twisted and Uncorked podcast. Remember to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening now. It really is the best way to spread the word. You can also check out all of our sources and materials, as well as photos for the episode, on our website at twistedanduncorked.com. And you can follow us on social media at Twisted and Uncorked or Twisted_pod on Twitter. Thank you so much for all of your love and support, and we will see you next Tuesday for a brand new episode. Cheers!